Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of Little Shop of Nerds. I'm Julia.
Mike.
And last week's hint was See You Space Cowboy.
Yep, that means we're talking about Cowboy Bebop, y'all.
Yes, so when I first started watching Cowboy Bebop, like way back in my anime infancy, I didn't really care much for it. But over the years, it's kind of grown on me. And my favorite episode is the last episode. Which there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the anime yet, you probably want to steer clear of this episode until you've seen it.
Yep. And pretty much what Cowboy Bebop is, it's pretty much about bounty hunters. If you look at it, it gives it like a noir tale, and you're like, what's a noir? Like, pretty much like a detective tale almost, but a little different, more bounty hunter. Actually, Jet Black, was it Jet? Jet, he was actually a cop, because when you look at some of the episodes when it's just about him, how he narrates, he talks like a private eye noir detective.
Well, I mean, he does have connections, to the police department, it looks like.
Yep.
We saw that in the episode, I think it was episode 6, where he contacted a friend of his to get help about this kid that they were looking for.
Yep. And pretty much, like I said, it's all about bounty hunters. The main characters you need to know is Jet, but he's like the second main character. But the main character is Spike, and he was kind of part of a mob organization. What was it called? The organization, I think. And pretty much something happened. He escaped from it. He became a bounty hunter, met with Jet, and became a bounty hunter pretty much. And you got Faye Valentine, who's pretty much a con artist. Half the time you don't know what you can believe, if she's telling the truth or not. And we'll get into that about her past a little later. Then there's Ein, the little quirky.
I love Ein. Ein is my favorite character by far.
And there's Edwin.
Edward. It's Edward. Apparently, Edward was, they were originally going to make Edward male, so then they gave her a male name, and then they decided that it would have been there were too many men, so they changed her gender to female, but just kept her name, because apparently Edward named herself when she was abandoned by her father.
And here's another thing, that also the characters are not from Earth. Only Ed's Faye's also from Earth, but we'll get into that later. Ed's pretty much from Earth. Spike is from Mars, he said. He said he was from Mars. Mm-hmm. And what you guys don't know, it takes place in a futuristic world. Pretty much there's colonized on planets. There's
hyperspace portals for them to go through and stuff like that.
A space station casino. And pretty much everything you would think of roll into one. And I would say give it a watch. And like right now, stop right now, go watch it and come back. Then right now, let's get into it.
Yeah, there's 26 episodes, so it's not a very long series.
It's only one season.
Yeah, it's episodes are about a half hour long. It is from the 90s, 1998. So
go 90s.
If you can deal with an older art style, then definitely go for it.
I am. I remember the first time I saw Cowboy Bebop when I was a kid, when it was on Toonami. But I remember you had to stay up late to actually watch it, because they would not show it during the day.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, because there is shooting and blood and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of death.
Especially if you didn't have DVR, because DVR was around back then, but when you couldn't afford it, you really had to stay up.
Yeah. and if you didn't have it on VHS or anything like that. Because, I mean, back in the infancy of anime, it was really hard to get your hands on anime videos. It was so hard just to get merch, and you either had to import it or you had to know Japanese and all that. And I'm glad that stuff like Cowboy Bebop is coming out on DVDs and out on streaming services, so it makes it more accessible to newer generations who want to watch some of the older stuff.
Yep. And right now, like I said, it starts with, Spike and Jet. They're on their ship waiting for a bounty. They get a bounty, and I think it was a drug ring. Because I think Ein...
Yeah. No, Ein was in the second episode.
Yeah, because Ein doesn't come to the second episode. So they pretty much help a lady that was pregnant, and they're trying to escape, and, so...
It turns out that she wasn't actually pregnant.
No, it was an act.
It was how she was holding on to all the drugs that they had. I don't remember what the drugs were for. But the guy that she was with was definitely on something.
And
then she ends up shooting the guy and then killing herself.
Yeah. And at the end, they didn't get their bounty. And that's also another thing in the season. In a few episodes, they don't get their bounty. Even when they're trying to... They don't get much of their bounties. And when Faye joins the crew, their bounty starts to get better a little. Then when it got more better. And then, like I said, Ein came into the second episode, which Spike hates, by the way, because he says... No.
Yeah, Spike doesn't seem to like dogs very much, but after Ein starts living with them, he doesn't seem to mind them so much.
Yeah.
Now, Faye definitely, when she started staying with them, she definitely has made her displeasure of the dog known. In one of the episodes where they didn't have any food, all they had was dog food, and she ate Ein's dog food in front of him, and Ein's whining, and I'm like, oh, poor dog. Like, I love dogs, so Ein is definitely my favorite character out of the entire series.
And, then, we had Jet, which is pretty much the second bounty hunter of the crew, but he's also pretty much like the mechanic, pilot, and the connections guy.
Yeah, he doesn't really go out and handle the bounties as much as Spike and the others do.
Yeah, and one thing about him, he's got like this metal plate around his eye and a robot arm, and it's like freaking awesome. And but you do see more of his character later on in the series. Like I said, he used to be a cop, and how he does the episode when they do the episode of him, but it's just him. You can tell he's like pretty much playing as a detective because he used to be one. So it makes him gives it the noir feel of the show, of the anime.
So, there is one episode I wanted to bring up real quick, and it was episode 6, and it was this little kid. I think it was episode 6. It was this little kid, and there was one of the hyperspace things like exploded, and it killed his parents, but he just stopped aging. And I thought that he looked a lot like Celine Bradley from Fullmetal Alchemist. And I remember sitting there looking at him and thinking, when was there a crossover of Cowboy Bebop and Fullmetal Alchemist? And why is Celine Bradley in this episode? Of course it wasn't him, but he looked a lot like him, and that kind of threw me off a little bit.
I remember that episode, and they gave him like a little serum or something that Spike injected in him.
No, because he had that ring that the guy that was trying to kill him at the beginning of the episode had the ring and gave it to Spike.
Yeah, it was a ring.
And I think what they did was he shot the ring at the little boy and hit him in the head, and then that was able to reverse his aging, and he aged rapidly and then ended up dying because he had lived way past his
Expiration.
his expiration date.
But one thing, when he aged, he looked like one of those aging kids from that movie Akira with the psychotic powers. We'll talk about that later in a future episode. I know she might not.
I mean, I've seen little bits and pieces of it, but I haven't watched it like all the way through.
Well, I have. We'll talk about that later. But like I said, besides that, there's also an episode of Space Truckers about a space trucker woman.
Oh yeah, I just watched that episode last night.
And truth be told, how built she was, I thought it was a dude.
I thought it was a dude too.
Because how big she built, she looks like that chick from Overlord, who's a fucking adventurer. I forget her name, but she's built like that.
I haven't seen Overlord yet, Mike.
It's boring anyway.
But yeah, so yeah, so she only went by VT, her initials, and she was like trying to get she earned all this money and like a bet on who could figure out her name, and no one could figure out her name. And it wasn't until the end of the episode she helped them try to get a bounty, but the guy ultimately ended up dying before they could get her bounty or get their bounty. He had died like right as they had gotten there, and Spike was in her space truck, and he saw this locket or something that she had, and it had a picture of her and her husband in it with her name. And I don't remember her last name, but her first name was Victoria. And it didn't say her last name in the locket, but he automatically knew her last name because he saw her husband. And he was like, I know your husband. And I guess her husband had passed away. So she didn't do like bounty hunting anymore. She used to be a bounty hunter with her husband.
And then she became a space trucker.
And then she became a space trucker, yeah. And so she was going to give him all that money that she had collected, because that was, for whoever could, guess her name right. But then Spike just took, I think it was like 1,000 wulong from her.
Yeah.
He just, and let her keep the rest of it. And I'm sitting there thinking, Spike, you should have taken the whole thing, because now you guys got to eat. You guys ruined some ships and everything.
Well, we expect, hey. And then, there was an episode, we get more into Faye Valentine's story back, because, she always gives her a different idea of her story. But it turns out she was frozen. And there was an episode how she became unfrozen. Some people, like the guy who taught her how to be a con artist, saying, oh, you weren't really frozen and all. But here...
So he was, trying to gaslight her?
Yeah, and other stuff. There was also, trying to hide his identity because of, like, say, con artist, people trying to chase him. You get the point.
No, is that the guy with the cowboy hat that she was all over?
No.
Or is that a different guy?
That was Andy.
Oh, okay.
One that looked like Spike.
Think?
Well, there's a guy that looks like Spike, and he wears a cowboy attire, so that's Andy.
And they're, in a room, like a hotel room, and... It's been a while since I've seen that episode.
Yeah. Well, besides that, further on, say, there was one time they're on a planet, they get a package, it was for Faye, and it was a tape, but one thing, it wasn't a VCR tape. What was it called? Betamax tape or something? That's like a VCR but different.
Is it smaller?
Smaller.
I think that's Betamax, yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much they want to know what's on the tape, and they had to pretty much go to the ends of the earth. They went back to Earth to go inside a wrecked mall and trying to get a regular TV and a VCR. Well, here's the thing. Once they were trying to put the tape in, he got the wrong player.
So they never got to see what was on the tape?
They did.
Oh.
But another package came along. It was a Betamax player. So, but one thing is, all of this stuff was delivered for Faye, and even Jet's like, you owe me a lot of money to take your package. And because they charge for the delivery thing, and he's like, and they play the tape, and there was a girl that looked like Faye. It was Faye as a girl. It was recorded, and I guess later on we figure out what happened to her, why she stayed like I think her like close to the age of 20 or was it 30?
She looks like she's in her 20s.
Yeah, well, she was frozen because she was in a spaceship and something happened. There was an accident and they saved her, but they also froze her. And
So how long was she frozen? Does it say?
I think a long time.
Well, I mean, they were calling her like Lady Luck.
Yeah.
In the episode that you met her, and she was like, "Well, Lady Luck hasn't been around for like 200 years."
Yeah.
So I don't know if she was frozen for that long, or if she was just talking out of her ass when she was talking to the casino dude.
Yeah, I think out of her ass, but it could be both. Because you don't know much, because she's pretty much a con artist, so you don't know if she's saying it's the truth or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get with Edward. He's from Earth, but here's the thing: Earth has been, how can I say, like some parts of the Earth flooded. There's always a meteor shower, debris falling from space. Even the orbit has debris, like in that movie WALL-E. And pretty much, Edward got on this. And one thing about Edward, she's a computer hacker, and she became an asset for the team. She can hack everything, and
it's probably why their bounties got significantly better, was because she was able to do hacking and stuff like that.
Yep, and all the chasing. There was episodes of a person who was already dead. Their mind was in a computer. There was even an episode about when Spike put like a certain space lobster in a fridge for too long. And
is that the one where they ate and they all got like really sick, or?
It was like a blob, and
and
I guess there was a parasite that was growing and attacking from it, but it was kind of remind me of that movie Alien.
Yeah.
But anyways, after that, they went back to Earth because Edward was trying to find her father, and we know why she couldn't find him, because he's always on the move trying to map out the Earth. But since meteor showers happen, it changes the line and everything when he's trying to make his map. And and that's what happened. There was what happened is, like, Edward's dad said, "Hey, come with me, and we'll be great." But one thing, after he said that, he just left without her. And Edward's trying to figure out if should she stay or should she go. And she realized she wanted to go, and she left. She left pretty much. Spike, Faye, and Jet, the gang. Her and I went with each other because there was an episode where they both were trying to get food and everything. Something happened, and some kind of mushroom thing going on. And so pretty much Edward and I left with each other and go find Edward's father, pretty much. And then we get more to the Faye story. Then we get close to the end with Spike.
So this is where I personally think it gets better. So when Spike left the organization, he had a fight, I do believe, with Vicious. Vicious. And it got to I guess he was really badly beat up. And he he was walking down the sidewalk and he fell over. And this woman named Julia found him and took him in and nursed him back to health. So, they fall in love, and after Spike hadn't seen her in years, I think 3 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And, because I don't remember how he left her, but he did, and hadn't seen her in 3 years, and then they run into each other again. And then Vicious has her killed in front
And
of him.
yep, and that's when Spike knows he has to go take down Fishes and the organization. But here's the thing: he goes in it alone. He doesn't take Faye. He doesn't take Jet. Even Jet says it's a bad idea. But then again, he even for his last meal, he gave him what was it? Was it peppers and beef?
Something like that, yeah.
And that's what they eat in the first movie and the first episode. And Spike's giving Jed this speech about he has to do it and he doesn't mind dying. And Faye pretty much doesn't want him to go.
See, this is where Mike and I have differing opinions. I personally think that over the course of the episodes, Faye had fallen in love with him, and that's why she didn't want him to go.
In my opinion, I think they were just friends because how they were always bantering back and forth.
They argued like a married couple, Mike.
Nah.
Yeah, they definitely argued like a married couple.
Yeah, I think it's more like a friend bickering.
No, I definitely think it's a married couple. They sounded like a married couple.
Well, whatever. But
anyways, I personally think that she had fallen in love with him, and that's why she didn't want him to go. Because she did like point her gun at him and said, "If you go, I'll shoot you." And then he just turned around and just walked away. And she shot the ceiling of the ship instead of actually shooting Spike, like she said she was.
And, Spike goes, takes down the organization.
By himself, mind you.
By himself. Takes down Fishes, and when Spike gets ready to die, he pretty much does his whole gunpoint thing while the lights are like flashing lights going off. Then he dies, and
he says bang, and then
bang.
He falls over and dies.
And that's Cowboy Bebop in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I would say it was good, but there was part when it gets close to the end, like say in the middle part of the season, it kind of got boring, kind of like filler episodes. Then at the end, it was a perfect way to do it. I know people say, I wish Spike would live, but I would say I think he might have been better off dying because it's a perfect way to end a season, but in a show. But I know people say, yeah, I know you can end the show without him dying, but if he didn't, I wouldn't think it would have felt right.
Yeah, like I personally would like. That's my favorite episode because Spike dies. But you could have done a good ending with him surviving. But then it's also a good way to end the series too.
It's like a bittersweet ending.
It is a very bittersweet ending because the woman that he loves died, and he was able to avenge her death and then die along with her. Yeah. But now I personally do think that Faye had fallen in love with Spike, but she just never said anything because she knew how hung up he was on Julia.
Well, I still think now, but hey, if you guys believe that Faye liked Spike, or you think Spike and Faye were just friends, put it in the comment. We'll bring it to a vote, and let's see how that goes. Mm-hmm. And right now, I think that's pretty much it we have.
Oh, we have, yeah.
I give it a 10 out of 10 with the story and everything. I just think the middle part was a little slow and boring, but that I think that was just filler episode till we got to the main part.
The main part.
Yeah. And no, we haven't watched the live action. Maybe in the future we'll watch it and give it a review.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of sad that they pretty much, they pretty much bullied the people that did it. But I mean, anime weebs are some of the most vicious people out there.
Yeah, I know. I made one joke on a nerd group about Sword Online and Yu Yu Hakusho, and yet so much Sword Online fans got pissed at me.
Yeah.
Which they need to take a joke.
Yeah, they don't know how to take... Some weebs don't know how to take jokes.
Alright. Alright. Our next sweet hint is... It's morphin' time!
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And... Alright, that was terrible. But please like and subscribe to us, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah, with the next episode. Bye, guys.
Bye.